US President Donald Trump says he's giving Ukraine until next Thursday to accept a peace plan the US drafted with Russia. The White House has reportedly threatened to withdraw American support for Ukraine if the deadline is not met. The 28-point plan is closely aligned with Russian demands. It calls for Ukraine to give up territory to Russia, shrink its own military and to drop its plans to join NATO. Concessions military analysts say would make Ukraine more vulnerable to any future attack.
The details of the peace plan emerged as Ukraine was marking its Day of Dignity and Freedom, a national holiday intended to symbolise the country's independence and affirm its democratic ideals. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy attended a memorial to honour Ukraine's fallen soldiers. But just hours later, he warned Ukrainians the country was facing one of the most difficult moments in its history, one that would leave the country with neither dignity nor freedom.
The pressure on Ukraine is among the heaviest it has ever been. Ukraine may soon face a very difficult choice, either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner. Either a complex set of 28 points or an extremely difficult winter, the hardest one yet, followed by further risks, a life without freedom, without dignity, without justice.
It's almost 4 years since Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Now, around 1/5 of the country is occupied by Russian forces. Among other things, the peace plan would force Kyiv to cede much of that territory to Moscow. The plan also calls for assurances that Ukraine will not join NATO and for a cap of 600,000 troops in Ukraine's armed forces. Ukraine's European allies were quick to reiterate their support for President Zelenskyy.
Russia has no legal right whatsoever to any concessions from the country it invaded. Ultimately, the terms of any agreement are for Ukraine to decide. The EU is providing record levels of military support to Ukraine to help to defend itself, and we will continue to do so.
In Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin gave his cautious backing to the plan, but said that further discussion was needed. He added that both Ukraine and Europe needed to understand what would happen if Kyiv refused.
I believe the text can be used as the basis for a final peace settlement, but it has not been discussed with us in detail. And I can guess why. The US government has so far failed to secure Ukraine's consent. Ukraine is against it. If Kyiv does not want to discuss President Trump's proposals and refuses to do so, then both they and the European warmongers must understand that the events that took place in Kupiansk will inevitably be repeated in other key areas on the front line.
Back in Kyiv, Zelenskyy must tread carefully. He knows Ukrainians are eager for peace, but not at any cost. He also wants to remain on good terms with the US, Ukraine's largest military backer. Donald Trump has given him 1 week to decide.
DW Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert is in Vilnius and joins me now. Good to see you, Konstantin. We heard a bit of President Putin's reaction to the US plan. To use Trump's terminology, does Putin hold the cards here?
Well, you never know where and when Putin tells the truth. To me, it seems like he is trying to impress on Donald Trump and the American administration the necessity to push Zelenskyy to accept it. That's why you've heard, these statements of prescience and knowledge in advance, of which we had absolutely no indication before. So he hints that he has very special channels to deal with Donald Trump. Probably he does. Probably he just exaggerates. And secondly, this threat to continue pressing in the East at the front line is also something that threatens Zelenskyy, and I think he also tries to push Trump to pressure Zelenskyy more. That's what I see from these remarks by Putin.
The next key thing, Konstantin, I guess Putin says the plan needs discussion, but with whom. Does that mean he'd be willing to sit down with the Ukrainian president, do you think?
You're right, he's extremely unwilling to sit down with Zelensky. He would prefer the Americans to pressure Zelensky till the very last moment and then probably sit down and not looking at Zelensky to sign some kind of paper. I think that is his calculation. Putin wants the Americans to do the job for him.
According to the US plan, some frozen Russian assets would go toward rebuilding Ukraine. I think I know the answer here, but is that something Putin would accept?
I do not think so, because that is probably the only sort of element of this peace plan, of this proposition, that really impinges on Russian sovereignty. And I think that this is not so much the question of money, although it is also a question of money, of course, but also the fact that something is going to be taken from Russia. And that's not much in this paper that we've seen that will be taken away from Russia. I suppose that it will be difficult for him to accept it, very, very difficult.
The next thing that might be difficult, the European involvement. The G20 summit opens today in South Africa. Could there be more backing of the US plan there, even with worries in Europe that the plan is so heavily slanted in Moscow's favour?
Anthony, I do not think that Europe is ready to fully back this plan. I think that the European leadership the EU and the UK will continue to push for some kind of modifications. I do not think it will be accepted as such, also because, as we've heard earlier, President Zelensky framed it in such dramatic and, in my view, pretty correct terms. It is the loss not only of dignity, but of sovereignty, very significant elements of sovereignty for Ukraine. So I think that the Europeans will try to continue to convince Washington to go the other way. It's another matter that some countries of the global south, who see Ukraine in a completely different light, may actually support it.
DW's Konstantin Eggert, always great to chat in Vilnius. Thanks so much.
Thank you.